Jim, as I said earlier, has been working for the past year or so, these 2 years, with Linwood and Beath Community Development Trust as part of the broader apparatus of the GrowTrust. And Jim is someone who's reflected deeply on his own experiences of regeneration and of community's experience of regeneration and empowerment over the years, and has been drawing some conclusions which are probably different from conclusions that other people in the room might have been drawing or be wanting to draw. But we think it's a very important part of the debate to be able to bring that experience, that process of thought, and to share it as part of the broader process through which we try to figure out, where we are in Scotland with communities and what we should be trying to do. So, Jim, thank you.
Okay, hello. Right, those who want to know about the GrowTrust, the website is there, and Linwood and Beath have their website. And it's great to see Beath here, because they don't usually turn up if they don't get an award. What I'm going to do is not talk about what Marie and the examples of tea in the pot there, about the individual changes and all the rest of it, and Beath and Linwood have their own stories. I want to go to a community level. And I want to suggest some things that people may not agree with, but I think are based in the reality of communities. So I want to start off by a wee something that I like. It's something that was said by Dom Helder Quimera. He was an Archbishop in Brazil. What Dom Helder Quimera said was, when I feed the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask why there's poor, they call me a communist. And I think what has happened very recently is that communities are beginning to ask, why? Why is this happening to us, and what is it that we're going to do ourselves? No more asking for permission to do it, but setting out their own agenda. This is what we're going to do, this is what we want to do. But first, I think what we're talking about is working class communities, right? So we're not talking about all communities, we're talking about working class communities. Now, people don't like that term, use a different term. But it is those communities which are basically taking a pounding over the last 30 years. And what I would like you to do is yourselves, and I won't ask any questions for that, but just reflect in your own lives. What was a traumatic experience in your life? Was it a death or whatever? How did that affect you? How did you get over that? And when you do that, what I want you to do is put that in the context of a community. And communities throughout Scotland. Linwood, Beath, Clydebanksy. Okay? So mass closures, mass unemployment. It's not a family within those communities that weren't affected by it. Yeah. Huge trauma in these communities. But there was voices in those communities even then who were telling policy makers, politicians and others that this didn't have to happen. So we have examples in Beath where the last of the furniture manufacturers shut down roughly 1984, losing 400 jobs, and there was people there saying there is a different way of doing this. There's the possibilities in the future that we could reignite a manufacturing, etc. And then they were told, nonsense, rubbish, move into service. That's something old and in the past. 5 years later, IKEA opens its first shop in the UK. Okay? Clydebank, Danny was there, Vigil outside Cabernet, produced the best turbines in the world. In fact, their workers were so skilled they sent them across the world so that other workers could learn from them. The night of the vigil, the policy makers were standing, and so was the MP, and the shop steward, Robbie Robertson, and the others told them, there's potential here. We could do something. If we invest, we could do something. Thing of the past. What we need is retail and housing. Well, we know the story about turbines onshore and offshore, and we know who's producing them. And Linwood, the closure of Linwood and everything that affected that. And there was people in Linwood, within the trade union movement, who were saying there is a possibility here, there is possibilities of continuing this, albeit on a smaller scale, but there is the possibility of doing this, and we could reinvigorate the car manufacturing, policymakers told us no, that doesn't work anymore, we have to move on. Nissan Sunderland. People know, as Chuck said at the beginning, what their communities want. There is skill in communities if harnessed can produce future for the future. And it's communities themselves that will do the empowerment. So when the communities went through a trauma, what happened was, years later, they needed capacity to build because you need to reignite them. They had to do something. And communities weren't accepting it. History within communities are strong, they knew the lead up to it. So capacity builders were put in. Change was professionalised. It was taken away from community members themselves and professionalised. And quite deliberately professionalised. People say a bit conspiratorial there, Jim. Someone set out deliberately to privatise development. No. So, people began to look around and say, it's us that want to do it. And the authorities say, no, you need something done to you. To the point that Blair and his government produced a paper called Private Action for Public Benefit. And what Blair's office said was, see all this, getting people involved, consultation, participation, all this kind of thing. It's not really quite working. They're not accepting their policies. So what he did was privatise, basically, community development. And that has progressed in Scotland and all the rest of it, and we have organisations like community interest companies. You would think community at the front of things means that you are part of, involved in, and accountable to the community. Well, it's not. You can set yourself up as a community interest company, move in and do things in the community, but what it opens up to you is grants, it's public investment in that. So I think there was an early awakening of people in communities, early 2000s, who began to say, no, things aren't going. And if you put on top of that the banking stuff, if you put that the expenses, people began to question, why are we listening to these people who are obviously corrupt, who obviously can't run their own affairs? Why are we doing that? In the early 2007, we got a wee taste of what people were doing in the political field. You know, shove in the SNP and mix it up a wee bit and see what happens then. And then we moved on to something that was not meant to happen, is that an SNP majority government was elected. Now, people, I think, were empowered. They were empowered. They decided we're going to change the politics. Now that should be celebrated, shouldn't it? It should be celebrated that in working class areas that churned out Labour votes changed the way they were thinking and said we're going to take control of this. But it wasn't celebrated too much. And then we moved on to the referendum, where the kind of dynamics of politics, discussions and everything else changed. People were talking about real issues, coming together to talk about real issues. And regardless of what side anyone voted for, when you look at the turnout in that election, you look at the age group that turned out, and you look at the areas that turned out, something quite dramatic was happening in our country. And something quite dramatic was happening in working class areas. So something's very evident that there's a disconnect between the policies and the practice. Areas, people, communities are wanting to do things themselves. They want to set their agenda, and they know now that to change things politically, you can vote them out. So nobody is safe. But the lessons from Linwood and Beath is that organisations that are within communities must be accountable to those communities. And I don't mean that structure of accountability, of governance and all the rest of the kind of stuff. It's about the accountability to people themselves, to the volunteers who work for them, to the use of social media, to be hauled up in the street when something doesn't quite go right or wrong, etc. You are part and parcel of the community. Your governing structure is part and parcel of the community, and the agenda is driven by the community. And I'll give you two examples, two quite pertinent examples that came out of Linwood and Beath. Well, I'll give you three. One has happened quite recently in Linwood. A choir of 60-odd people, a community choir, and the hall is double booked, council hall double booked. Now what usually happens is everybody goes home, hall double booked, what can you do? What they did was just took over the space outside the hall and said, this is ours and we'll do it here. No permission is required from anybody to carry out the activities people want in their areas. But the serious two things that happened was Tesco's in Linwood, and it's on their website of what Tesco got up to in Linwood. But there was a shopping centre basically that Tesco owned and weren't going to do anything with. And a tenacious group in Linwood, women, got together and were determined that something was going to happen. So they campaigned. Now, capacity building needs to be changed. Because when those women sat beside Tesco and the council, Tesco had the lawyers and their planners, and the council had the lawyers and their planners and their finance people. And there was this group of women sitting. Now, the capacity there is for lawyers, financiers and planners to sit beside those women and to take them on at their own game. It's not to go through governance structures with them. It's not to show them how to use Excel spreadsheets and how you should lay out your finance. These important issues are what communities want. It is that capacity that needs to be put in there. And what the women had to do was go away and study planning law. This is while they're working. So that they could go to the next meeting and say to the councillors and say to the Tesco's, that building's coming down and here's the section you can do. And we sat at a meeting and that's exactly what they did. Where Tesco had to put up the white flag and the building was demolished. Now that is empowerment. But that example of empowerment you don't hear about, plastered over Scottish Government things about community empowerment. The second one is down at Beath, where they're taking over a very large campus, etc., and we're sitting with council officials who, I have to say, at director level, have nothing to do with this. They're buying it from out with the council. And they argued their case to get the council on board to help, argued blue in the face, and the council official refused to move. They were quoting their own policies at them, and council was refusing. And it dawned on us when we were sitting there to say to the council, do you know something, we're not asking you, can we do this? We're saying we're going to do it, and do you want to come on board and help us? That's empowerment. And that's where capacity building needs to be put in. So people know now that in practice that's where change happens. It is in doing change that you create change. That it's in the process of change you begin to realise the barriers and the problems. And through those barriers and problems you start developing the policy solutions to them. And it's the relationship between policy and practice that we really need to start looking at. Because in our own country we have a huge swathe of organisations between policymakers and communities who act as filters. And there's vested interest in that section of people who really need to get their acts together and really need to start questioning what they are doing. Because what is being reported back to the policymakers is not what's happening on the ground. And the changes that are needed are not being reported back to the policymakers. And that grouping in the middle needs to change or be changed. And I think it would be preferable to follow the example of other leaders recently who have left the stage. Policy and practice, policy makers and communities need to come together now. They don't need interpreters, intermediaries, to filter out what's needed, what's said, and otherwise. Because this change is going to happen. I think it's only a question now of how quickly it's going to happen. So the whole thing about capacity building needs to be looked at, and the whole thing about change needs to be looked at. Now I'm going to kind of start ending off with one example of where policy and all this kind of gets out of kilter. Is check put up, community empowerment bill, saying to communities, take over assets because assets are the thing to do, and communities are saying, right, we're up for that, that's what we'll have. Linwood and Beath are an example of that. There we are. And then another policy, local authorities and everybody's putting assets into a bag and saying to arm's length companies, you take them away. Right? Now, someone surely at these levels have got to think, like, if all the assets are over here and they're controlled by someone else, and we're telling them the dud assets are left and the good assets are away. So you think, if this is your big policy plank, and you've allowed all that to happen, what do you think is going to happen to your policy? And are we going to go back to what Blair was deciding that communities can't do it? They can't do that. When the reality of the situation is that the two policies are in confrontation. So one of the solutions to this is don't stop the transfer of power to arm's length companies. Mutualise the arm's length companies. Bring them into community ownership. Let the communities start owning these arm's length companies, not just in leisure, but also in housing. The Wheatley Group, Glasgow Housing Association, the Wheatley Group now one of the biggest housing associations in Europe. Mutualise them, bring them back into community ownership. And then what people say is, but when you talk about community organisations, who are they? You know, they start all this accountability and all that kind of stuff. And Tony Benn had 5 questions, and I think if you apply the questions, you know who is a community group and those who are not. What Ben said was, ask yourself this, what power have they got? Where did they get it from? And whose interest did they exercise it? And to whom are they accountable? And finally, how do you get rid of them if they're not doing what they're doing? So I'm suggesting to policymakers, when you're going to sit down with anybody who says, we know what they're talking about, you know, we've got our finger on that pulse, ask yourself those five questions. And when organisations come into your area who say, we're the interests of the community, ask them the 5 questions. And if they can't answer them, they're not with the community, you bomb them out. So, what do local communities know and understand that policy people may not? I think number one, as we've seen, the historical knowledge of communities are there that policymakers don't have. We also know there's that disconnection between policy and communities. There's that cluttered middle grouping that we know isn't working. And we need policies that focus on the solutions. And there is a need for collaboration and cooperation, real collaboration and cooperation. Not what we have just now, where agencies, usually that sticky middle crowd, come in, ask community organisation, what is it you do and how do you do it? And then they say, thank you very much, and go and get the funding and all the rest of it. Tea in the pot will be well aware of that. And the need for a new approach to capacity. Put the capacity in. When local authorities run into trouble, they don't have capacity building sessions. They usually hire consultants, lawyers and all the rest of that kind of stuff. When private sector firms want to do things, let's look at the whisky industry, who want to stop the alcohol labelling, etc. They don't hold massive capacity building sessions. Let's get to know each other and all the rest of it. They hire the best of lawyers. And when arm's length companies, unaccountable, undemocratic, that have our assets, want to do something that we can't get the assets back, they hire some of the best lawyers in the country that we pay for. Capacity building is about putting that same technical expertise into communities. And once that happens, it will only take a couple of times, as in the case of Tesco's, before everybody starts talking with a different language and wants to resolve the situation. So what do I think policymakers should do? I think they should start, and we know this can't happen overnight, and communities are very measured. They have to open up the dialogue directly with communities. No more interpreters. No more middle agents and organisations. We need to sit down, and resources need to be put in that communities themselves can decide what kind of policies, etc. they want, discuss that together and sit down with the policy makers and have conversations as to over the next 10 to 15, 20 years what we're going to do policy-wise. And arising from that, we agree how it's going to be delivered and who's going to deliver it. And crucially, if social justice is the road we are on, social justice means redistribution of power, wealth and authority. And that, as Chip was saying, in the context of social justice, etc., is moving power, resources and authority to working class areas and working class organisations. Because as Dom Helder said at the beginning, we have to look at solutions and all the rest of it. He was one of the great liberationists as well. What needs to be done is what they did in South and Central America. There has to be an option for the poor, a preferential option for the poor. That means resources aren't spread thinly across everybody and everybody gets a wee share. It means those who need them get them.